This week in archaeology news, genomic sequencing reveals when Neanderthals mixed with modern humans, a magnetometer study uncovers a thriving ancient Assyrian capital, and why ancient Egyptians bound their sheep's horns. Today is December 18th, 2024. I'm Dr. Marshall Schertz, and this is Archaeolist. First, excavations from elite tombs at the ancient Egyptian site of Hierakonpolis show the earliest examples of humans physically altering the appearance of their livestock. The practice of modifying the horns of domesticated animals like cattle and sheep exists today and is also known to have stretched back thousands of years. The modern-day Pokot tribe of Kenya practiced this horn modification on cattle in their hordes. Rock art in the Sahara Desert, dating up to 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, suggests examples of cattle horn manipulation, and ancient Egyptian tomb wall paintings show evidence of this from about 4,500 years ago. But not just cows and bulls had their horns bent around. From HK6 at Hierakonpolis, an elite grave contained 6 large sheep. The skulls were excavated in 2012, and this recent analysis was done by a team of zooarchaeologists, Doctors Van Neer, De Cupra, and Friedman. Zooarchaeologists are experts in studying the animal bones from archaeological sites. Sheep were an important part of Egyptian life. The animals were domesticated and then made their way into Egypt in the 6th millennium, roughly 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. The first type of sheep had corkscrew horns. Later, they were surpassed by the Amun type, also known as the mountain sheep, with crescent-shaped, backwards-pointing horns. The Egyptians took the form of these sheep and turned them into hieroglyphics. Analysis of the sheep's horns revealed extensive modifications. The horns were pointing backwards, parallel, upwards, or removed altogether. The changes were caused from fracturing part of the skull near the horns and then tying together the horns until it healed in the desired direction. It would then grow that way for the rest of its life. These sheep were also castrated, making them much larger than your typical sheep, bred for eating. Also, they lived twice as long, to the ages about 6 to 8. The likely reasons why have to do with prestige. The burials at Hierakonpolis, and around Egypt generally, often contained fabulous and exotic animals, like baboons or hippos. Typical sheep are not particularly interesting, so these modifications would create a more exceptional specimen. Plus, the upward variation of the horns made the sheep resemble the addax, a sacred ancient Egyptian antelope. Next, geomagnetic sensing at the famous Neo-Assyrian city of Khorsabad in Iraq shows that abandoned cities were far from empty. The Neo-Assyrian king Sargon II rose to power in 722 BC by usurping power and concentrating the state around himself. As part of these imperial efforts, he founded a new city to be his capital in 712 BC. He named it Dur-Sharrukin, literally translated as the Fortress of Sargon. Not long after the city's founding, in 705 BC, Sargon II fell in battle, and his son, Sennacherib, took over the rule of the empire. Following in his father's footsteps, Sennacherib created his own capital city, called Nineveh, located in modern Mosul. The shift in the administrative center of the Neo-Assyrian Empire brought government wealth to the new capital and removed it from Sargon II's brand new city. Textual records show a major drop in references to Dur-Sharrukin, as the new city center never really gained that prominence. In 1843, the French archaeologist Bolta rediscovered and began excavating the mounded palace district at Khorsabad, Dur-Sharrukin. While the main administrative area had palaces and temples with some of the finest examples of Assyrian art anywhere found in the world, the test excavations in the rest of the city did not find evidence of any other construction. Over the next century and a half, many scholars had begun to believe the city was empty, never filling in because of the short time Sargon II ruled there. In 2022, Jörg Fassbinder, an expert in the science of geomagnetic sensing, began a project to investigate the entire area contained in the city wall. The wall surrounds an area of about 1 square mile, far too large to investigate with archaeological excavations. Typically, soundings are narrow trenches cut deep to somewhat quickly see if there are any archaeological materials in a given area and if it's worth excavating at all. Instead, with a geophysical survey, technology enables archaeologists to see underground. Magnetometers are one tool that analyzes magnetic fields. Different types of soil, rock, and materials like mud brick give off different magnetic properties. By collecting that data and running the data into an algorithm, you can return an image that represents different types of material. Over the course of weeks, Fassbinder and his team carried 30-pound machines across an area of 2.79 million square feet, about 7% of the entire site. The results revealed at least 5 huge buildings across, one that could be a 127-room villa. A limited sounding at one potential building confirmed that a structure is there, with walls 4 meters thick and up to 1.2 meters of wall still standing. These results suggest the city was far less empty than people have believed for 150 years. casting some doubt on the narrative that of fast abandonment that happened after the death of Sargon II. As an aside, during my dissertation research in Iraq, I actually worked with Dr. Fispender on a geophysical survey of a site that contributed to my final manuscript. He and his team provided us with a map that eventually led to the excavation of part of a monumental building. Finally, new genomic sequencing of a series of bones from early humans puts a date on when humans and Neanderthals started mixing and suggests multiple migration routes of human out of Africa. A large study from the Max Planck Institute, published in Nature, aimed to better understand the genetic profile of early humans and how they related across regions. To do this, they first looked at the genes of the skull of a woman, known as Zlatý kuně, meaning golden horse in Czech. They then reanalyzed a series of bone fragments originally recovered from the site of Ranis, Germany, located about 140 miles away from Zlatý kuně's find spot. Importantly, these bodies were connected to the Lycombian, Ranisian, Germanizosian, or LRJ, archaeological culture. The LRJ culture has been dated to about 45,000 years ago. A previous study had analyzed the mitochondrial DNA of the Ranis samples and determined there was no Neanderthal DNA, but mitochondrial DNA only covers a fraction of the body's entire genomic sequence. This study looked at the nuclear genomes to get a better understanding of the individuals there. They determined there were bones from 6 people there, 3 males, 3 females, 2 infants, a mother and a daughter. One male sample was particularly well preserved, named Ranis 13. With this, they sequenced the skull from Zlatý kuně from a female. Somewhat shockingly, the sequencing showed these people were relatives with only a 5 to 6 degree separation away, despite the fact they lived hundreds of miles away. Based on some modeling, the team suggests that the population of this area at the time would have only been a few hundred people spread out over hundreds of square miles. The phenotypes of these people have traits that are associated with dark skin, dark hair color, and brown eyes. This would reflect the group's somewhat recent migration out of Africa. Importantly, the DNA of this group of LRJ early humans does not share a common lineage with modern humans today, but their genome shows elements of Neanderthal admixing in our DNA. This means that at some point between 49,000 and 47,000 years ago, humans that left Africa mixed with Neanderthals, but then split out into different groups, one being this LRJ group. Using this new data point, archaeologists and anthropologists studying Neanderthals' relationship to humans have a new understanding of that timeline. That's it for today's news. This is the first episode of many, with weekly updates sharing new and interesting archaeological developments in context. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications to get notified when next week's episode drops. Until then, keep digging.